Hello everyone and good morning and welcome to another De Montfort University live stream. Hello everybody. Welcome to the live stream. We are going to be talking about student finance this morning, as we know that plays an important role into the university process. So if you are thinking of going through the university process, thinking of going to university either this September or sometime in the future, and you have questions about student finance, hopefully we will be able to answer those during this 1 hour live stream. First things first, say hello to us in the chat, drop a little wave, say hi. If you are on Facebook, obviously you can drop that in the comments down below. We will be sure to read those. If you're on YouTube, again, obviously pop those in the comments. If you're viewing this through the DMU website and you can't see the comment box at the minute, not to worry. You can click on a little link within the video itself. That should take you over to the YouTube page, and that's where you'll be able to obviously drop a little comment to us there. And that is a great way of engaging with us at any point during the live stream. So if you have any questions at all about student finance, do make sure you pop those in there. Hello to Bilal, who's just joined us on YouTube. So yeah, do make sure you pop over there and just say hello to us as we start over to this live stream. So we are going to be looking at student finance and funding. And like I said, we're going to give you some advice about those over the next sort of hour or so. But you'll be pleased to know it isn't just going to be myself chatting away over this hour, because that would get very, very boring. I have got some of my work colleagues with me today who are going to be helping to sort of answer some of those questions, take over some of those topics. As I wait for people to just sort of arrive into the live stream, we're going to do one or two introductions. So first things first, I'm going to introduce you to Faye. Hello, Faye. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great, thank you. Looking forward to speaking to students this morning about student finance and breaking down some of those myths. You know, if you think that you can't afford to go to university, hopefully this will clear a lot of things up for you.
Thank you very much, Faye. Next, I'm going to introduce you to Dal. Hello, Dal.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate.
Good. Hello, everyone. My name's Dal, and just like Faye, we're here to support you, answer any questions you've got regarding student finance.
Excellent stuff. And I'm also going to introduce you to Tay. Hello, Tay.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm also a recent graduate. I've been through the student finance process myself. So if you have any other questions or anything like that, put them in the comments and we'll be able to help you today.
Excellent stuff. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to introduce you to Nikila. Hello, Nikila.
Hello. Hi. So we're just here to give you some advice on student finance, how to budget properly. Tay and I are recent graduates, so we both graduated in 2018. So we have a bit of experience of it relatively recently, and obviously because it's so recent, we can give you a bit of advice and hopefully keep it relevant.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much. Also, hello to Charlie and Uma in the chat. Hopefully we'll be able to get to Uma's question very, very shortly. But first things first, we're just going to do a little bit of a sort of introduction to student finance. So in terms of why it's important that we talk about it at this stage, particularly for those students that are potentially in year 13 or looking to start university in September, we're looking at why or how that sort of funding is going to support you at university. Obviously, university sounds on paper like it's going to cost you an awful lot to go and actually study there. So we're looking at actually how that student finance is there to kind of support you and what funding is available to you for you to be able to kind of make sure that you can make the most of those sort of 3, maybe 4 years at university. I can see some more people popping in the chat there. Hello again to Bilal, hello to Poppy. So again, like I say, if you've got any questions throughout this stream, do make sure you pop them there, whether it's for myself or for any of the guys here in the live stream this morning. So first thing I want to talk about very, very quickly is tuition fees. So obviously going to university, as I mentioned, it sounds like an awful lot when you start to look at the sort of fine print. So universities can charge up to £9,250 per year for your tuition costs for you actually to study at that university. Now, that's obviously sounds like quite a large figure, but it's just a case of the universities are using those to kind of obviously pay for the various different resources and things that you use at the university, which we'll come on to in a moment. Now, when it comes to actually you applying to student finance for you to actually cover those costs at university, the loans for the tuition costs will cover the full cost of that tuition fee. So you get a full tuition loan for that £9,250 comes to pay those costs for you to study at university. So realistically, it's not something you necessarily have to worry about when it comes to those kind of payments. It's available obviously to all UK and EU students that are looking to go to a UK university, and you'll be able to have a look at all those details via the Student Finance website. So if you haven't already looked at the Student Finance website and you've looked at the resources for student finance, outside of this live stream, that should be your first point of call, is having a look at the details on there and having a look at actually how the process all kind of works. And like I said, we're going to be able to talk about that over the next sort of hour or so. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dal, who's going to talk a little bit about what those tuition fees actually pay for. So Dal, over to yourself.
Cheers, Ben. Yeah, so when we look at tuition fees in terms of what they cover quite a bit. So as you know, like Ben was mentioning, it's up to £9,250 a year for you guys to study. It sounds a lot when you look at it on the surface, but when you actually break down and understand where those fees goes, it's totally understandable as to why universities can charge so much. So first of all, your contact hours with both academic and support staff. So depending on the course that you guys are doing will depend on the time that you'll need to spend with the academic staff. If you're doing something in arts and designs, for example, and you need to get on board with some technicians, or use the lab spaces, or use the area spaces for those courses, that all costs money for universities to put together. We also have a very comprehensive library as well. So as you're probably aware, textbooks can be quite expensive at university. What we try and do is provide most of those resources for you to loan. So you can loan those during your studies, and it saves a bit of money in regards to going out and buying each individual text for each semester that you study at university. We also have a very good computer and IT system, which we're seeing more than ever, with everything being transitioned to online. So you can still get in touch with your your staff, you can still get in touch with your peers. And we also have a site where all of our resources are easily accessible from an internet portal. So again, these are the types of things that your tuition fee goes for. And we also have a variety of support services. So for students, we don't want you to feel like it's a very lonely journey when you come to university. So if you are struggling with an element of university life, then you've always got the option to come and talk to us. And that goes for the student union. The student union are there to represent you. So we make sure the student union are there to help you. And if you do have any issues, or if you do want to add value to university experience, you can always have a look at the student union. Your degree and choosing whatever degree you guys choose, may have certain accreditation. You may need to take certain examinations to get those accreditations. And what we use as a university is your tuition fee to gain you those accreditations. So not only would you be leaving with a fantastic university degree, you'll also be accredited by some of the great accreditations that are recognized by employers. And we're always trying to make investments into our campus to ensure that we're mirroring employability. So you guys have the opportunity to use the facilities that you guys will need for when you transition into your roles. So we're trying to ensure that the facilities that we have on hand at university are there, and they're on par to those that we use in employability.
Amazing, thank you very much. So that's a good sort of start to looking at actually where those tuition fees kind of go. But the big other part of university is those kind of living costs. So actually looking at all those other wider things outside of that £9,250 you pay to university, all those wider living costs that come with actually going to university, particularly if you look at things like moving into accommodation and that sort of thing. So I'm going to pass over very quickly to Nikila to actually talk a little bit about some of those living costs. Nikila, unmute your mic.
There we go.
There we go.
So I think one of the things I was probably a bit naive to when I started university was just how much I would need to be paying out in terms of the actual living fees. So when you start university, one of the biggest things that you're going to be paying for is your rent. That I would recommend that be the first thing that you pay out of your bank account as soon as your student finance drops. We'll discuss this a little bit later. That'll be the first thing you pay for, so then you know what you're left for. And then you've got things like bills to consider. So the bills that you'll have to pay for are things like your phone, your gas, your electric, water, your internet, your Wi-Fi costs, TV license. They're all bills that are going to be there, things that you need to consider, things that you need to budget for. You've also got things like food and groceries that you might be paying for the first time. So we do recommend budgeting properly and making sure that you are doing this efficiently. So you've also might have to consider things like transport transport costs. So for myself, I didn't have to pay transport to get to and from any of my accommodations throughout the time at university, but some people do. Depending on the type of university you go to, you might have transport costs to get to campus, you might have transport costs to get to your accommodation. However that might be, that's something that you need to factor into in terms of your living costs. You're also going to have course materials to pay for. So whether that's books or depending on the type of degree that you do, you might have certain software that you have to purchase, or if you're doing an arts degree, you're going to have art supplies. There's always costs in terms of your course materials as well. Stationery, of course, most people are going to need stationery for their courses, printing costs, that type of thing. All of these go into your course material costs. You're also going to be paying for clothes and toiletries for yourself. These are all things that you need to budget for. And things like insurance as well might be a cost for you. So whether that's home insurance, phone insurance, depending on the type of accommodation that you go for. Most places don't offer content insurance. It might be something that you want to think about. So it's just good to have some awareness about the types of costs that you might have when you go to university, just so you can start to think about how you might budget and think about what kind of budget you're going to be needing to live on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just bring everybody else back in. So in terms of those sort of living costs, obviously we've touched on that. Does anybody else have any sort of examples of things that they used to spend their sort of student finance loan or anything they can sort of add to that whilst we're here?
I didn't spend my loan on anything, like what Nikila just said. So when I went to university, I was a bit of a cheapskate. I'm not even gonna lie. So I didn't want to, like Nikila said, she had to pay for accommodation. I looked at accommodation and thought, you know what, that's going to be quite expensive. So I thought, can't I make a few friends here and there, crash on their sofas, crash in a spare room, then chuck them a spare 50-60 quid or whatever it may be, or but take them out for dinner, because I know it will save me a lot of money in the long run, because I always used to come home as well, because what I wanted to do with my money in terms of the money that I was given, so I was to travel. But I'll talk about that in a bit more detail as we go through, but I didn't do what Nikila did there, so I think she missed a trick.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah, I think that the accommodation experience was fantastic for me. It really, really made my student experience. I met so many people, you know, learned how to properly look after myself, how to do my laundry, just, you know, going out with people and just saying, you know, have you done all your coursework? Do you want to pop out? You know, it was just, it was a great experience for me. It really made my university life.
Amazing. So, moving on then, quite sort of related to that, is how do students actually pay for it then? Obviously, we've talked a little bit about how that tuition fee is going to support for obviously the tuition loans that are required for you to pay to actually study at university. But obviously, as Nikila and then obviously Faye and Darragh talked about a little bit there, is that you do get this thing called a maintenance loan. And a maintenance loan is what's used to pay for those living costs. So I'm going to hand over very quickly to Faye, who's going to explain very quickly about how that side of things work.
Yeah, so regardless of what you want to do, whether you want to live at home, whether you want to stay at a mate's or move into halls of residence, there is student loans available. So yes, you've got your tuition fee loan, but you've also got a maintenance loan that you can access. Now you can check your eligibility online. So if you go on to Student Finance England, so if that's where you wish to study, then that's the website that you would check to see what you are eligible for. So again, even if you decide that you want to live at home, you can still access this. We understand that you're going to have other costs. It might be course materials, it might be transport, you might be helping out with the bills or buying food, for example. It is different to the tuition fee loan. The tuition fee loan goes straight to the university. So you don't actually get to see, you know, £9,250 in your bank account. Whereas with a maintenance loan, it goes straight to your bank account, and it usually comes in 3 installments throughout the year. So that will be September time, it will be after Christmas, so January, and then after Easter, so usually around about the March or April time, depending when Easter falls. So some things that they do to have a look at how much money that you might get, so that's Student Finance England, they'll have a look at where you're living, so if that's a home, it's away from home. And if you decide that you want to study away from home and in London, then you would get a little bit more money to live on, just because accommodation is a little bit more expensive in London. They'll also have a look at household income. So if you are from a lower household income background, then you would get more money to live on than someone from a different kind of household background. So you can see here, if you are, whoever you live with, if that's mum, dad, for example, and they bring in a higher household income, then you have less to live on. And I guess that there's some kind of expectation from the government that there will be some kind of family or parental support. Obviously, that might not be the case, so do have that conversation sooner rather than later to see how you are going to make ends meet, if this is going to cover what you need to live on for university, or if there's other things that you might need to do, whether that's working in the summer holidays or whether it's working during term time, a bit of flexible part-time working. It's good to start finding these things out now and then planning that in for later and finding out how you're going to make that work.
Thank you very much, Faye. And I think what we're going to do is a little bit later is come on to questions sort of surrounding like budgeting and how to kind of add on to that maintenance loan. So that's a topic for a little bit later. So a question that we've just had in the comments, just to tie into that, is from Chris, who said, if I'm an EU student, what kind of maintenance loan can I get? Oh. Faye, do you want to comment on this one? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So do check. There are some kind of loans out there. It might be that it's through your actual own country. So yes, we can provide, the government can provide tuition fee loans. But it might be that for EU students and UK students, but the maintenance loan can depend on a few things. If you are actually living in the UK and you've been in the UK for a certain number of years, then you might be eligible for it. But if you're coming from abroad, you might have to just do a little bit more research as to what is available to you. Are there scholarships available, bursaries? Is there something available in your home country that supports students that are coming, going abroad to study?
Absolutely. Sorry to drop you in there ever so slightly, Faye. And the other question that we had is from, and I'm really apologies, I'm not going to be able to say that, Kromcizek. Sorry if I've ruined that one slightly. Is on the site that Faye mentioned, they're asking about parents' income. What happens if I live alone? So generally on that one, just to touch on it before we move on, there is a base amount that students will get from student finance anyway. The additional amount that sort of Faye was mentioning in regards to household income is essentially on top of that sort of base amount. So looking at the figures before, there's a base amount that you get that you'll be able to put in there based on what you're sort of earning on the student finance website. It will give you sort of a rough figure. So if you have got that sort of parental income or household income, you can add on to that. That'll be an additional sort of loan on top of that, essentially. Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much. Keep your questions coming in. What we're going to do is going to jump over to Dal, who's actually going to talk us a little bit about how the student finance process works. So how you actually apply and how you actually go through that sort of student finance process.
Nothing like doing the fun sections, eh? So the application process is actually quite simple. So it's very similar to what you would have done with your UCAS application, although you don't need to write a personal statement or anything like that. So all you need to do is to go onto the Gov website /student finance, or if you can't remember that, or if you forget that for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure if you hit a Google search and just typed in the word student finance, you'll be able to have a look at where that application actually sits. Okay. Before you actually start your application, it might be worth doing a student finance calculator now. Both Faye and I think Ben has already mentioned this, to understand how much you're going to get before you come to university, because then you're able to plan whether the amount that you guys are going to get is going to be able to support you, whether you want to move out or whether you want to stay at home. So it just makes that process of choosing your university course a lot easier. What you need to do from there, once you've been onto the Gov website, the one that's on the bottom of the screen here, you can then go on to create an account. So on there, it's going to ask you to provide an email address and password. Please remember these credentials, because you will be needing those for each year that you study at university. And it's very, very important to add that your student finance is not paid 3 years in advance. It's only paid semester by semester. So you have no financial obligation to stay with us if you find out that, you know what, university is not just right for me. You haven't got this massive financial commitment hanging over your head. So they will only pay term by term that you study. Then each year that you're in university, you just have to go back onto the website you see on the below on the screen to reapply. So it opens roughly in around mid-February, towards the end of February, and you have all for September entry, and you have up until around mid-May, but given the circumstances of this year, this may be extended. But we always advise our students to do their applications as quick as they can. The data provided by Student Finance England suggests that over 60% of students last year made a late application to student finance. Now, all that means to you as students, if you need your money before you move now, you can't, with student finance cannot guarantee it's going to be paid in time for September. Okay, so make sure you use an email address you use, make sure you know the password and the details, so when you log in for future, it's always there and handy. Okay, so what some of the information that you guys need. So first of all, you'll need a passport or a form of identification to give to student finance. Okay, you will also need your university course details. So some of you might be in a situation where you haven't heard back from all your university choices. Do not panic. Do not let this be a barrier as to why you don't complete your student finance application. The best advice that we can give you is that you should just put your preferred choice. So what is the choice that you want to go to? And then from there, you'd put those details in to student finance. You'll also then have to provide your national insurance number, your bank account details, although these can be updated later. So if you change your bank account, don't worry, just give student finance a quick call and they will be able to change those on the phone. You'll also see a sponsor section. Now, your sponsor is your parent or guardian or someone who takes financial responsibility is. So there's two parts of this application form. So you would fill out the student section and your sponsor would fill out the sponsor section. So that could be your parent, guardian, or whoever it is that you live with. They will also need to provide a lot of information. So in terms of how much money they've earned, if they're self-employed, their tax assessment, how many other dependents there are in the household, because student finance takes all of these in to consideration. So any discrepancy in any of the information that's given to student finance is just going to mean a deferred application for yourself. So the biggest bit of advice that we can give you is to make sure that you are providing the most current and up-to-date information to ensure that your payments come on time. What we always recommend is that you and your sponsor do the application together and you get it done together, because it only literally takes around 20 to 30 minutes to get it done. So it's really something that can be done just on an afternoon or an evening. Just don't defer it. And the process itself is very simple and very straightforward. All the information that they ask for will be online on that website.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dal. Tay and Akie, have you, obviously you've recently gone through the university process. Do you have any advice of students, or think back to your time when you were applying to student finance, any advice with regards to the application that Dal's just talked about?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main things, as Dal said, is to stick to the application deadline. I personally, what I would do is I would go online and find all the deadlines for the student applications, and then I would put them in my calendar so that I knew that they were there. I had no excuse to miss them. And then I'd put like a reminder on my calendar maybe 2 weeks before to say, oh, it's a deadline in 2 weeks, to make sure that I had the time to sit down with my mum and do the student finance application, because obviously you have to do that every year. It's so easy to forget about the first one. You're not going to forget because you know that you need to do it, but so many people forget that they've got to then do it every year. So just put a date in your calendar that you know you've got to stick to, and that way you won't miss the deadline.
Perfect. Tay, do you have anything else to add onto that?
Yeah, definitely. With me when I was applying for student finance, I made sure I always spoke to my friends, because we were all in the same journey, and I think it's great. Do talk to them, you can ask them what which part of the process you are, or what have you done, what haven't you finished, and they can help you out. And in that way, it kind of keeps you track of, as Nikki said, where you are in terms of applying the application.
Perfect. And as I say, if you have a look on that link that was on the screen a second ago, I'll just flash that back up again. There's a lot of resources available there that will run you through the whole process. As Dal said, it doesn't take too long. It really isn't that complicated. And if you are looking to start university in September, get it done as soon as you can, because there are obviously thousands of students that are looking to go to university, and we don't want you to be starting your first sort of semester without obviously the money to support you when you get to that stage. So very quickly before we move on to a few more questions, Faye, can I jump over to yourself and talk to you a little bit about repayments, because obviously that is a big concern for a lot of students. We've talked quite a lot of money at this stage, you know, from the maintenance loans and the tuition fees. It sounds like an awful lot of money. So how do students pay that back?
I think it does sound really scary. You're borrowing, you know, tuition fee loan of £9,250 a year if you're a UK student, and then maintenance loan on top of that as well. You're coming out with, you know, having borrowed quite a large chunk of money from the government. So it's quite scary. You think, well, I need to know, how am I going to repay that? Is it going to be weighing on my shoulders? And the really, really good answer to that is that actually the repayment terms are really, really, really good. Really, really it's not going to be something that causes you sleepless nights, essentially. Once you graduated, all of the money that you've borrowed is consolidated into one loan. And how you actually repay is through your pay, so your pay slip. So you don't have to set up any direct debits. You don't have to, do anything complicated. It just comes out the exact same time that the taxman takes out his money, national insurance, for example. And that's how it works. So it's all linked to your wage. It's linked to how much you actually earn and not how much you've borrowed. So it's nice that if you aren't working, you're not expected to make any repayments. So you don't actually make any repayments until the April after you've graduated, and only once you're earning over £26,575 a year. It's not a round number. That would make it quite easy for us. So how they work it out as is your 9% of your earnings over £26,575 is what they take. So a nice infographic on the screen for you here to kind of break it down. So you can see on here, if you're earning around about £30,000 per year, your monthly repayment is £30. So perhaps round about the same, or perhaps even less than what some people pay for their mobile phone bill. And out of this, you're getting a degree, and lots of opportunities open to you just from having a degree as well. So really great employment opportunities. If you haven't made any repayments throughout, the next 30 years, it's completely wiped. If you've paid a small amount, whatever you've paid off, it doesn't matter. It's completely wiped after 30 years. So even if you've worked in the volunteering kind of industry, or maybe you haven't worked, you've worked in care, whatever it might be, your balance is still wiped after 30 years. It can't be passed on. So if you get married, or it can't be passed on to somebody else. It's the loan that you borrowed. Something else to also mention is interest rates. So that is something that is added on to what you've borrowed. Sounds quite boring, but it's good to have a little look at it anyway. These are the figures on the screen for you to have a little look at, probably kind of digest later. You can always rewatch this back if you wish. Again, a lot of people aren't going to pay it off. It's a large amount of money that you are borrowing. Unofficial kind of statistics say that you'd have to be earning at least £45,000 a year coming out of, graduating, coming out of university, and continuously rising quite high after that to actually pay it off within the 30 years. So this is just something to bear in mind, but it won't really have a significant impact. It will most likely be that you will be paying that kind of for 30 years, almost like a graduate tax. And again, if your wage, if you're not working at any point, if you decide to change jobs or decide to have a break from work, payments completely stop. So just bear that in mind. If you're not working, you're not going to have the bailiffs or anybody chasing you for money.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just bring everybody else back in there. And I think those repayments, as I say, they do sound quite scary, as you mentioned, but Faye's kindly there broken down how those repayments kind of work. And you'll see there that obviously the repayments that you make, particularly as you're going into those sort of average graduate jobs of around that sort of 26,000, they're very, very minimal. To be honest, I don't even notice they're going out. And I think the scariest part of the student finance repayments is when you receive the letter in April to say how much you owe, but obviously you're not expected to pay that all back in one go. So hopefully that's, if anybody was sort of worried about that, it's alleviated some of those concerns. Does anybody else have anything they want to add with regards to repayments, or have we touched on that? No? Perfect. So just a couple of questions that we've had, having a quick look in the comments. We've had quite a few students who are asking about international finance. Obviously, this stream is more specifically around sort of Student Finance UK. But I think, as Faye mentioned before, there is often finance support for you in your sort of home country that you can have a look at. So do make sure you have a look at those sorts of schemes. Tate, have you got any information that we could just jump over to you very quickly in regards to that?
Yeah, with international students, you know, we do have scholarships available for them. So we do have a DMU international scholarship, which basically, if you do pay £4,000 first, a deposit, there is £1,500, which is taken off your tuition fee. And also, we also have the early deposit fee, which if you know, if you do pay earlier than the timeline, you do get like £500 off. We also have the Leicester Castle Business School scholarship as well. So if you decide to do one of the business courses or anything like that, you do have scholarships in place for that. Again, you would have to talk to your modules and the faculty, and they would let you know more information about that. Also, we also have a DMU sports scholarship. So that is also available for international students. So if you do play your sports, for example, football or something like that, and you're really good at it, you can apply for that scholarship. We do have all this information on this international scholarships page. It will be updated soon, so just keep a lookout on that page for more information.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And there are other scholarships available around that, not just for international students. So it's worth having a look at those as well, including for those students that are going to be doing something like an NHS course, because there's an NHS bursary that you can get that will support those students that are going down that particular route as well. One of the questions that we have also had was from our booking form prior to the live stream going live, and that was about sort of student part-time jobs. So the question we'll hear from Hemrietta was, is student part-time job sufficient enough to pay for student accommodation? I think this is quite a common question that we get covering sort of this. So can I jump over again to Tate to talk a little bit about what happens if your maintenance loan isn't quite enough?
Yeah, so first of all, if your maintenance loan isn't enough, you can always go to your parents. That's what I did. I stayed at home, so that saved me on accommodation. My parents were paying the bills, they had to pay the electricity and everything. Also, if you are moving away from home, I know a lot of my parents, when you look at little things like traveling costs and things like that, my friends' parents, they drove my friend to and from university. What that would do is save that money, you know, spending about £60 from the trains or anything like that. Also, in terms of parents helping you out, my friends, they would make food for her for the week, and that means she wouldn't have to spend that money on takeaway. You don't realize this, but as students, you do spend a lot of money on takeout. That's where I think half of my money went. Again, scholarships and bursaries and grants. I will talk about that in a second. And again, part-time jobs as well. Part-time jobs are a great way to, you know, save that extra money. If you have, again, you would have to work with your timetable, because obviously your studies come first. And then, you know, if you have that spare time and it works around that, you can get a part-time job to help you out. They can be a few hours. They don't have to be long hours. Again, there's something that you might want to be looking at is interest-free drafts. So some banks offer interest-free drafts. For example, I know I was with Santander, and they do. So you can pick up about £2,000 without interest. And again, with these banks as well, they offer you things like rail cards, which saves you a lot of money, like especially if you're from London, or if you've moved from like Manchester or anything like that, and you're going to be traveling back and forth. These train rail cards and things like discounts are going to really help you out. We also have the hardship fund. So if you feel like you've run out of money, you've spent all your maintenance loan on shopping or anything like that, we do have the hardship fund provided by the university. And if you're really struggling, you can speak to somebody in the Student Advice Centre and at the university, and they would be able to help you out. coming back to scholarships, bursaries, and grants. So something to be mindful is that you don't have to pay it back. The scholarships, bursaries, and grants, they're yours. You wouldn't be expected to pay them back as you would with the tuition loan or tuition loan as well. With scholarships, the way you can get these is if you have high grades, say you've done exceptionally well. So universities recognize that, and they want to give you merit for that, and which is why they might offer you like a scholarship for that. Again, it depends on your academics, or if you're doing extracurricular activities like sports and you're really good at it, and you're just doing extra besides your academics, you're doing more. Again, and it depends from universities to universities. A lot of different universities offer different things. Again, with bursaries, they're given to people who need financial help. So if you're like care leavers, you can get up to £1,000, I believe. And also, if you're estranged from your family, you can get around £1,000 as well. And again, you have scholarships specifically for the courses. For example, the NHS scholarship. So if you're doing something like nursing, midwifery, dentistry, or any of the healthcare courses, the NHS does have a funding in place which you can apply for. Again, there's travel grants which you can look into. There's a few different weird ones out there as well. There's a vegetarian charities ones, which I believe is £1,000 as well. Another scholarship that you might be want to look into is if you are a child of nursing. If your parents were pharmacists, you can get a scholarship in place for that as well. With DMU, we have the DMU High Flyers scholarship and a sports scholarship as well. So you can look into those. These are all on the website and they should be updated with the NHS fundings as well. With DMU, sometimes they are automatically put in place for you, so you don't have to, you receive those emails automatically when you do apply for these subjects.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, as Tate's just mentioned, some of those scholarships and bursaries you can get via student finance. So when you're going through the student finance process, you'll see some of those options on the actual student finance application form. And then some of those will actually be available through the university itself. And again, those are, as Tate just mentioned, specific to certain universities. So it's all about doing that research. Tate, I do have another question for you, but just very, very quickly before I jump into that. We've had a question from Megan, who says, do I need to apply for my loan? Simple answer is yes. It's not done through the UCAS process as your university application is. That is done through the separate form that Dal talked about earlier through the student finance website, which I will flash up very, very quickly just here. There you go. So if you go over to there, that's where you make your application. So it is done separately from UCAS, essentially. Tate, just very quickly, I've got another question to put you on the spot ever so slightly, but how does funding work with placements? Because I know you did a year abroad. Would you be able to just talk 30 seconds about that?
Yeah, so with the funding, that's done by the universities, or if the universities are working with the government, what they would do is pay for your travels and pay for your accommodation or living there. So all you would really have to pay for is your flights and your visa. I did my internship in China for 2 months, and with that internship, the university and the government, they paid for the accommodation that I stayed there for 2 months. They paid for everything. So my language classes, whilst I was learning Chinese. So this is something you might want to look to. DMU Global at DMart for University does that. So there's like, internships or placement years, or even just a exchange program you have there. Again, these would be funded by the university or the government working in collaboration with the university itself. So if you look on the websites and everything, all the information should be there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they want to add with regards to bursaries and scholarships that Tay hasn't already covered? No? Happy days. Just one other question that we've had. I'm going to chuck this over to Dal, I think. When is the student finance deadline?
Officially, the student finance deadline is May the 25th. So the portal would have opened at the end of February, and you have up until, well, you've probably got about 2 weeks left, but with everything that's going on, it'd be worth just checking to see whether that deadline's been extended for this year only. But usually the deadlines are generally fixed.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I think it's worth noting students that do go through something like clearing, which opens in sort of mid-June, July time. Obviously, student finance will have provisions available for those students to actually apply if they decide to go to university late, or if you do change your university application. As Del mentioned before, it's very, very easy to go via that web form and actually change your university details if such a situation arises. So last couple of bits that we want to cover here on the live stream is tying off what Tay's just talked about and what Faye talked about earlier with things like maintenance loans, is sort of top budgeting tips. Now I'm going to come around to everybody and get them to talk about their budgeting tips in just a moment, but I'm going to start off with Nikila, who's going to give us some of her sort of top budgeting tips that she used while she was at university.
Thank you. So I think some of the things that we're going to cover, I think one of the most important things is choosing the right bank account. So as Tay said earlier, some bank accounts will provide you with perks with joining them. So things like, I use Santander as well. So you got the rail card, and the rail card does last for 4 years as well. So in terms of how much you're saving and not having to apply for the rail card will save you 1/3 off travel. So that over the course of your studies does add up to quite a lot of money. As we said as well, you are eligible to apply for an overdraft, but not everyone has an overdraft on their bank account. It is something that you need to apply for. So do look into the different bank accounts that are out there and the different overdraft amounts that are available. And we will say as well to make sure that you're not relying on an overdraft. An overdraft is more of like a short-term spending solution. So if you have a particular bill that comes out that you weren't prepared for, say you need to pay deposit for your next year's accommodation, and you just don't quite have the money at the moment, you're still waiting for student finance to pay for your next payment, and you just need to borrow it for just a little while, then something like that would be useful to use your overdraft for. But it's not something that you should be using and thinking, great, I've got an extra £2,000 that I can spend. You do have to pay it back. There are consequences if you go over that allowed overdraft amount, so just be responsible about it, really. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, pay out your largest expenses first. So your accommodation, your bills, those types of things, all your fixed expenditures, pay them out first. You can see what you're left with, and then you know how to budget for the rest of the time that you're waiting for your next student finance. If you are working part-time and you do have scholarships, you're going to have money coming in at different times of the year. So you just need to make sure that you are actually having money lasting until your next payment is due to come into your bank account, whether that's student finance, a salary or a scholarship or anything like that. We would recommend using things like apps and Excel spreadsheets and that type of thing to manage your finances. So when I was in university, personally, I used the Monzo bank. So if you don't know what Monzo is, just pop it into Google. It's a really easy bank to use. And the main benefits really that I found was that money left you instantaneously. So if I went shopping, I would get a notification on my phone as soon as I spent some money that the money had left my bank straight away, so I could see what I was actually left with, rather than waiting perhaps 3 or 4 days for the bank account the money to leave your bank account. And then realizing, oh, actually, I don't have as much money as I thought I did. The other really good thing about Monzo is that you can set aside money in something known as pots. So it's like having a little section of your money that's put aside so that you know, I can't spend this. So say if you know you've got a particular bill coming out that you need to budget for, rather than having to withdraw the money and keep it on yourself, which is obviously not a sensible thing to do, you can just pop it aside in the pot just to make sure you are budgeting yourself correctly. The other thing we would say is do not buy your books straight away. I made the mistake personally. When you start university, your first couple of lecturers are going to tell you, these are all the books that you need to buy throughout the course of the year. Please go and buy them. And a lot of people will go and do that straight away because they're scared of them going out of stock. What that means is that you're not making the use of the resources that you have already. A lot of the books are already there in the library. You can just borrow them for periods of time. You don't need to keep them all the time necessarily. Also, you can buy them secondhand. So a lot of the time, previous years will be selling their selling their books secondhand. So you can buy them for a lot cheaper rather than buying them directly. It's also quite wasteful as well, because not every single person is going to need a copy of the book. So just be a bit more efficient with your money and also use the resources that are available to you in terms of the library. We also recommend doing things like bargain hunting, so avoid convenience stores, just be a bit sensible with your money, realise that you don't need to be shopping in Waitrose, there's nothing wrong with Aldi and Lidl, just be a bit reasonable and live within your means, really. We also recommend using things like, I think it's called a totem card now, but it's originally called an NUS card, so you can get student discounts on things like clothes, restaurants, online shopping. There's loads of different options there, so just look into an NUS card when you apply for university. They're not that dear, and the initial investment means that you are saving a lot of money overall, so it is worthwhile looking into. And the other thing is socialise during the week. So a lot of bars and restaurants, particularly in Leicester, I know that they do a lot of that there. They'll have student nights in place where you can have discounted entry to clubs, or you can have 2-for-1 meals, that type of thing. So just make the most of that, really, and just enjoy the student life in that sense.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know I did exactly the same thing as you, and I ended up buying a very expensive book for about 50 quid, and I think I used it maybe twice.
Wasn't worth it. My laptop at the moment, and they probably cost about £200.
Oh, okay, so that's a very expensive laptop. Yeah. But Dal, I know you briefly mentioned your money saving tip earlier. Do you want to go into some more of your financial budgeting wizardry that you've got going when you're at university?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it wizardry though. I'd rather call it, I'm just a cheapskate. So I didn't want to spend money when I didn't have to. So what I would usually do is try and find people to live with, because for me, my university experience and just me as a person, I like to travel. I like to see things around the world. So what I wanted to do, like everyone spoke about how they use their maintenance loan, I was very fortunate enough to have a part-time job that paid me enough that I didn't really need my maintenance loan if I could move away from spending stuff like on accommodation, you know, the necessities. Like, who needs a place to live? Who needs food? You know what I mean? If I can get it from elsewhere and sort of just latch onto a few friends. So what I did, I made good friends, sofa surfed for a while. And then what I used my maintenance loan for was to travel. So, and that really made my student experience, my university experience, what it was. So we went to quite a few places within my first year. So, you know, like your Napas, your Zantes, your Magalufs, and we went to Ibiza, Mexico, Cancun, Miami. So, and it was really good to be able to be getting an education on one hand, but being able to see the world on the other. So for me, my biggest top tip would be make sure you're a very approachable person, make sure you're a very nice person, and try and make as many friends as you can and see what you can actually get for nothing. So if you don't want to spend in an accommodation, you know, your pal in your course, he's got a spare sofa, it's possibly worth a shot asking, right, can I use your sofa? And then when you're not at university like I did, I came back home. So I was at university for a couple of days and came back home. All right, Ben, I know I've had enough talking. You don't need to pull me off the screen.
Sorry, I clicked the
That
wrong
was my
button.
cue to shut up, wasn't it?
No. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button again. Happens,
I'm finished. You know what, Ben? I don't even want to carry on anymore, so I'm finished now.
So Dal's top tip is couch surf. I know that Faye had a bit of a counterpoint to that earlier, so I'm going to go over to Faye, who's going to give us her sort of top budgeting tips for university as well.
It's just I love my own space. I used to share a room with my sister until I was about 14. So going to university, I was like, yay, my own bedroom. So I'm like, oh, worst nightmare. I want my own space. So everybody's different though. I think just remember to pay some of your bigger chunks of money first. So things like accommodation. Where I went to university, I needed to buy a bus pass termly as well. So I made sure I got all of my big expenses out. I had a chat with my parents, said, can you support me? But I will admit at the time, you know, I was at university, my brother was at university, and my sister was at university. So it was a little bit of a tight situation. I didn't want to work whilst I was at university because I wanted to put my studies first. But do remember that you've got 4 months between the end of the university year and the next one starting. So that's a good chunk of time. I used to work full time during those 4 months, and that would help me save up money for the new term. I used to work over Christmas. I used to go back to my old store Next back at home, and I used to work Christmas sales, Easter sales. And that would help me supplement my maintenance loan, help me build back up my overdraft as well, which I did dip into. Don't be afraid to use it. It is there to help you in those hard times before you've got your next loan installment. So yeah, do remember that you can use those 4 months wisely if you want to work 4 months, or if you want to work abroad, maybe you can get paid to do that as well, enrich your kind of experiences. Or even if it's just working full time so that you can afford to travel whilst you're at university. So yeah, just bear that in mind.
Absolutely. Tay, over to yourself. Any sort of budgeting tips on top of what Nikila and the guys have mentioned?
Yeah, I would definitely say cook for yourself. Even though I stayed at home and I had my mum's food in the evening, I used to spend most of my day at university. So, I would still have to have like my snacks and my lunch and everything. The great thing about De Montfort University is we're a campus-based university and we're right next to town, so 5 minutes away. So if you want to have a part-time job, you can. But then for me, that money was spent on food during lunch because all the restaurants were closed, and I would just pop down to the closest takeaway shop and don't realize it, but those little up. So I would definitely say, make your own food, make your own lunch, and I think that saves a lot. Even meal prep as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else have anything else they want to add or ask Dal about his various travels? No.
I would notice not to ask people like students like Faye. Someone that likes their own space. That's another top tip. So you've got to work out each person's psyche. Like, oh, can I approach her now? I'll best leave that.
Only because Faye wouldn't let you in the front door, mate. So hopefully we've covered quite a lot in this stream in terms of obviously looking at the loans, looking at how much university costs. We've obviously talked a little bit about maintenance loans and how to kind of support yourself at university or how to use that money to go traveling. We've also talked a little bit about sort of scholarships and bursaries. So we've covered quite a lot in this stream, ending obviously there with some of our top tips for budgeting. We have had some questions come through from the booking form, which we're going to just go through over the next sort of 5 minutes or so. So the first one being, let's have a look here. Which ones have we not answered so far? Faye, you mentioned this one a little bit earlier, but I just want to go over it again. Is sort of how is student finance assessed and how often do we get the maintenance loan?
Yeah, so just to recap, you get the maintenance loan in 3 installments. So start of term, September time, January, and then usually April. So after the Easter break. So that's when you get it. It helps to kind of break it. If you've got it all at once, you might mess up and spend it all at once. So that's really helpful that it breaks it down. Student finance, you can have the tuition fee loan if you're a UK or EU student. And also it can depend, if you or have been here for a certain amount of time or what kind of your passport, if you've been here, asylum seeker, for example, something like that. There are certain situations where you might can apply as well. So check on Student Finance England. They're really, really helpful at telling you what you can access. A maintenance loan that looks at things like where you're going to live. Are you going to live at home? Live away from home? Are you going to study in London away from home? What's the household income? So if you live on your own or you live with parents, who helps to support you, or if you support yourself, then that's something that they will take into consideration as well. So they'll ask you lots of very, very personal questions. So make sure to have that kind of information to hand, or if it's your parents, then they will need to provide the information of how much they earn per year to the government.
Perfect. That was a good recap from earlier on in the stream. And I think what you mentioned there about things like asylum seekers and estranged students, that sort of thing. We had a couple of questions about things like the hardship fund and that sort of thing. So again, like I say, go and check out the student finance website, which is just there because there's a lot of resources on there that will talk about what Faye's just mentioned. And then obviously a little bit about those sort of scholarships and bursaries that you can get if you fall into that criteria. Last couple of questions that we've got. So we've talked very quickly about are there any specific savings accounts you'd recommend for at university? So Nikila kindly mentioned obviously getting things like an overdraft for your bank accounts. Piece of advice I would give on this one is avoid credit cards generally, because credit cards, I'm seeing lots of nods there as well. Credit cards, normally you have to pay back every single month, otherwise you are obviously then charged. That's how credit cards make money. But student finance, as Faye's just mentioned, only comes through every 3 months, so you don't want to put yourself in a bit of a situation there. So I would avoid credit cards, but overdrafts with 0%, they're a big sort of bonus there. The next question we've had is student loan like any other debt? Oh,
I think that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Faye, go on. Oh, go on. Oh, go on. No, if you look at it, this is just one of the things I wanted to say anyway. This is my political spiel. If you look at where we are now currently in terms of the current situation with coronavirus and everything, and if you're currently debating like, is student loan like any other debt, or in fact, is student loan worth the debt? We don't know what's going to be happening to the employability market. So we don't know whether employers are going to continue employing. So if you guys leave sixth form or colleges now and you try and enter in the world of work, it might be a bit difficult for you because of this current situation. One of the things that you guys know, by coming to university, you're going to spend the next 3 years. Hopefully, if we look back into the employability market in 3 years' time, hopefully it would have stabilized itself out and the opportunities will be there. But the plus thing for you will be is that you will be upskilled. So the skills that you guys have currently learned within your schools and colleges would have been taken to the next step. You would have a fantastic degree sitting behind you, as well as having that student experience that most students love whilst they're at university. So you'll be approaching the world of work in a overall better position, and you'll be more prepared. And to answer the question, is student loan like any other debt? Well, as Faye mentioned with the repayments, if you go to university, you have a fantastic time for 3 years. You do what I did, you travel for throughout those 3 years, and you never hit that £26,000 threshold. You will not make any repayments. It doesn't stop you or restrict you financially. So if you want to go buy a house, if you want to go buy a car on finance or whatever it may be, no one's going to turn around and say to you, well, hold on, you owe X amount of money to student loan. So in that respect, it isn't. All we're doing is investing in your future. And I wouldn't use it or look at it as a debt. I'd look at it as an investment. We're using this money to invest in yourselves. So that would be my view on answering that question.
Absolutely. Apologies there. I think there's a little bit of a network delay. I was going to say Dow seems to be in the UK because he was quickest. Faye, you might be on the other side of the world taking advantage of some of Dow's travelling tips. But Faye, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well done, Dow.
You cop out.
Yeah, Dow just edged in with his hand up first there for that question.
You still wanted to book me out though.
No, I didn't. Would I do that to you? Next question is, what happens if I drop out of university? I can see Tay wants to go for that one.
Yeah, I can answer that. So it depends. So if you did, take your loans from the Student Finance England or Wales, what happens is you would have to pay for that first semester, and you would and I think you would get your 25% back or something like that. So it depends when you drop out from the university. You would have to speak with the university's finance team, and they would have to do that. So again, as one of the colleagues said, it's the student loan and maintenance is given out every semester, every term. So you are not binded for that. So if you do drop out, if you do decide to drop out, you would only have to be paying for that semester that you have attended, and not for the rest of the ones that you would go to.
Yeah, and I think that's and correct me if I'm wrong on this, it's 25% for October to December.
Yeah.
Second semester is 25%, and then it's 50% for the last lot. So depending on when you drop out is when it would affect what you pay. Appreciate we're a bit short on time. So last couple of questions here. Do you have to reapply for your loans every year? Sorry, I'm getting my words muddled up now. See what's happening there? It's been a long hour, obviously. So do you have to reapply every single year?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah?
You do.
So the guys that have done their applications more recently, so Tay and Nikila, you had to reapply for each year. So did you have to submit your paperwork every single year?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. So online on the student finance website. They'd send you email reminders, they send you letters in the post. It's not something that's just left to you to remember. You just go online, you just update your details. I'll ask you for your household income details dated, and it just goes from there. It's not that complex. I'd say it's easier to update the student finance loan applications every year rather than the initial application. So it doesn't take too long. Just make sure you don't miss the deadline, because it can cause delays in payment. And it might mean that you are starting a term in the new year. So if you're starting in September, you might have a delay in payment, and it might cause a problem. So just stick to the deadline, really.
Perfect. Again, with the network delays there, everybody tries to fight over a question at once. So last one then. So what happens with your student loan if you move abroad?
So I actually moved abroad when I graduated.
Okay.
So I kept my address as my parents' house so that they could still receive notifications. You might be able to do it all online now. It's all online now. But you just need to make sure that you get in touch with them, let them know that, you know, if you're not in the country, for example, then they still need to know how to take the money from you, because at the moment it's through the UK tax system. So they need to know what you're earning and what kind of the minimum wage is in that country. So they try and work out a fair system, fair repayments for you to repay from another country. If you don't make repayments, it might cause you a little bit of a tricky situation if you do decide to come back into the country. So just make sure you notify them if you do go and move abroad.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add as we wrap up the stream? We've covered everything. Perfect. Good stuff. So I've got to do my bit of a spiel at the end. Thank you very much for joining us, for joining this live stream. Thank you very much to these guys for answering as many questions about student finance as we possibly can. We are running lots and lots and lots of live streams at the minute whilst we are working from home. So if you would like to join us for another live stream, I believe next week we are running one about UCAS and personal statements. So if you are in a position where you haven't sort of yet applied, or you want to find out a little bit more about actually how to write a personal statement, you can go to that website and you can actually book on for a reminder, and you can join us for our live streams there in the same way. If you're on Facebook and you're actually in part of one of the Facebook groups, you will get notifications about that with the group as well. So you can join us for that. We are still going ahead with one of our open days, but we're doing it all online. So we've got a digital open day, which you can sign up for by going to this link just here. So if you want to find out more about some of the courses we have on offer, and I know a couple of you in the comments did post some questions about some of our courses, so you'll be able to go along to that if you do have questions more specifically about the courses that we couldn't answer today. And if you have got any sort of burning questions that we weren't able to answer in this stream, whether it's about student finance or about anything else to do with university, we are all available via our UniBuddy scheme. So you can actually come along and have a chat with one of us. It's a complete text chat, so you don't actually have to talk to us in person. So you can post your questions on there to one of us, and we'll try our best to sort of answer those as we can. And last but not least is when it pops up, is if you would like a copy of our prospectus, which again has lots of course information, you can go to that link there. And all of those links that I've just talked about are in the chat. So like I say, thank you very much. Hopefully we were able to answer lots and lots of questions about student finance. We will see you next week for our UCAS live stream. But until then, everybody stay home, stay safe, and have a great rest of your week. See you later.
Slogans change, Ben.